Hello and welcome, and well done if you managed to find this video. A few months ago I did a short video on how to batch process raw images in Affinity Photo 2. This time I'm going to show you how to not only batch process images but also go through the workflow of a moon edit from end to end. So without further ado, and in Affinity 3 this time, let's get going. So first of all, I'm going to open one of my raw images. I'll just show you them here. Here they are. So I've got 20 raw images that I'm going to use to create my final moon image. So first of all, I've just got to open one of these. Open with Affinity as opposed to Affinity Photo 2. So that's opened okay. And what I want to do is make some edits on this. So it's obviously too dark. So I'm going to up the exposure. +2, I think, is okay. I'm going to whack the saturation up 50%. And I'm going to look at the white balance and see if that needs adjustment. I'm just going to cool this down a bit. Let's cool it down to 4000. And that makes it just a little bit more moon-like. In the lens correction, there's no lens known here. I'll talk about that in a sec. But I'm going to tick the chromatic aberration reduction. I'm not going to worry about the defringing at this point. I'm going to try and take care of that later on. And was that all I'm going to do? I don't want any detail refinement. Thank you very much. That is a default, I think, in Affinity 3. But I don't want to use any. And I'm just going to put in a bit of a tone curve. Just boost the highlights a touch and reduce the shadows a touch as well. I think that's okay. So let's just run through that again. Basic, I'm enhancing saturation 50%. White balance, I've made an adjustment. Shadows and highlights, I do want to do something here. So I'm going to just see what happens if I boost the shadows. Oh no, I'll reduce the shadows to get more contrast. I'm going to almost reduce them all the way. Let's put it 80%. Highlights. What am I going to do with those? I'll tell you what, I'm going to do nothing with those. I'm going to leave them exactly as they are. And I think I'm there. So that's the edit on one of my raw files. And what I need to do is to record this as a macro so I can apply it to all the edits. And the way you do that is to develop the image, which gets you into the Pixel Studio. Then go to macro, start the recording, then double click the image thumbnail to get yourself back to the develop persona or studio, and then immediately redevelop the image. And in the macro panel, you can see there's one step here. It just says develop, and that's exactly what we want. So we can stop the recording and then save this into into my library. I'm going to put it in an area called My Macros, and I'm going to call it Moon Batch Edit. Okay. And at that point, we can close this raw file down because it's going to get processed along with all the others. No, I don't need to save any changes. Right, so we're now ready to batch process all those raw files with that edit that I've made. So new Here we go, new batch job. I'm having to find my way around these menus on this new version of Affinity. Right, I'm going to add the files that I want to use. This is my example. Here are my files. I'm going to add them all in. And on the right hand side here, I'm going to save all the output files into the same location. I don't want to create any Affinity files. All I want to do is create TIFF files. And oh, we've got a problem here. Where's all the options associated with the TIFF files? Right, we've run into a bit of a problem here on Affinity 3 because when I select the Save as TIFF, I can no longer get into this submenu over here. I just get this sort of blank box come up. And there's a couple of options in there that I'd like to select. So I'm going to jump back to Affinity Photo 2 and show you what you should see. So I've got, this is now an Affinity Photo 2. And if I select this little drop down, you see you get some options. And what I would normally be doing would be selecting this resample rate of Lancos, and I'll be selecting a ROM RGB output for the profile. I'd also be unselecting zip and saying I don't want any compression. That's to hopefully speed up processing later on, and I'm not going to be keeping these files anyway. But we're not getting any of these options. So I think there's either a problem with my installation of Affinity 3, or there's a problem universally with it, which I hope gets fixed, and I hope this isn't a feature that's been sneakily removed. So let's continue on the basis of I am meant to be showing you how to do this in Affinity 3. So let's jump back. So we haven't been able to make those selections, but we do want to apply our macro that we just recorded, which we called Moon Batch Edit. Apply that, and we're ready to go. So we're going to get some TIFF files, but we're not going to get the TIFF files that I wanted, but we're going to get a default set. But regardless, let's do the macro. While that's running, I'll just say that the camera that I'm using is a Pentax K70. It's just really an entry level enthusiast camera with a crop sensor, and the lens that I've got bolted onto it for these moon shots is just a Sigma 70 to 300mm lens, but with two times converters slapped on the bottom of it. So I guess that takes it to 1200mm, and it's also on a crop sensor. Heaven knows what it might really be, but nevertheless, optically it's probably horrible. But I figured that I would rather have that than a smaller image and have to crop it right down to a smaller pixel size. So that's the state of play, and that's the best I can do on the budget that I'm prepared to spend. And these macros are now finishing. I'm getting some TIFF files being produced, which is good. So I'll just wait for those to finish and be back in a sec. Right, so those TIFFs all finished, and you can see that new files have been created in the same folder that the original raw files are in, and you can see they've got a greater exposure. So those edits that we made have been applied to each of these files. So the next thing to do is to stack these files. So let's hope we can do that without any problems. So we want to do a new stack, and we want to add the files, and we want to add all these TIFF files. Oh, I should have listed them rather than got a display like this. Never mind, I'll just quickly zoom through and select the TIFF files. Not very professional way of doing this, but by the time I've reordered it, hopefully I will have done it. TIFF, I think that's it, isn't it? Have I got them all? No, some more there. I think I've got them now. So open. And this time we do want to make a selection on this drop down to say scale, rotate and translate. And that's it. And we'll press OK. And so it's going to be away again doing its little process. If you want to see what's happening down here on the right hand side, you can see there's something happening because it says memory pressure 21%. Although that seems to have frozen right this second. And it's saying up here, one document loading. There we are, we're done. That seems to be a lot quicker than in Affinity Photo 2. So here we've got an image. The first thing I do is change the operator to mean rather than median. Makes very little difference, but it's just something I like to do. And the second thing I'm going to do immediately is to flatten this document because I don't need all the embedded layers inside that stack. So flatten the document. There we go. Next, I'm going to duplicate this pixel layer. That's Control J on a PC. I'm going to rename this pixel layer color. And above this layer, I'm going to put an adjustment in called Channel Mixer and change the output to grey. And then I am going to merge visible to create another layer. And this layer I'm going to call Luma as a short for luminosity. And I no longer need this channel mixer adjustment here. So I can delete that. And this luminosity layer, its blend mode, I'm going to change to luminosity. Luminosity. Okay, so now we've got the sort of basis of our new image. Next thing I'm going to do is to crop it. I'm going to crop this to a square crop. So in this drop down, I've got a 1:1 ratio. And I just need to center this up a little bit. Something like that, I think, will do for our purposes. So we can apply that. Recenter the image. It's Control 0 on a keyboard for Windows. And we're ready to go and start adding some effects to this image. The first thing I'm going to do is select the color layer. I'm going to use an auto levels adjustment on it and also a auto white balance adjustment on it. This hopefully will help bring out the color detail on this layer. Having done that, I now put some noise reduction. So I want a live denoise filter, and I'm only going to target the color noise here. So I'm going to zoom right in. So you may or may not be able to see the color noise depending on the resolution of the output video. But I'm going to just put 2% of color reduction on that layer. In the luminosity layer, I'm going to do the same thing and put a denoise in, but this time I'm looking for luminance reduction, and this will be very slight as well. 1 or 2%, 1% I think will do. Next, I'm going to put an HSL adjustment in this layer. So I want to embed it in the color layer and increase the color by about 40%. Control 0 on the keyboard to see what we're doing again at a reasonable magnification. That looks a bit better. I'm going to duplicate that layer again. So that's Control J to get more color. About as good as I think I'm going to get for now without going into lots of fiddling around. What I have noticed now is we've got some horrible fringing around the edge, got blue around this side and sort of greeny yellow around this side, which we could take care of, which I'll do now. So I'm going to duplicate this HSL adjustment again. I'm going to reset it. And this time I'm going to take out all the blues and all the cyans as well, which has obviously done that across the whole of the image. Now, I tried to invert the mask on this using the shortcut on the keyboard, which I would normally use Control-I to do that, but I couldn't, it didn't seem to work. So you have to go in on Affinity 3 and do invert mask. You can see the fringing has come back, and now we use a paintbrush and a white foreground to just paint away around the edge of the moon to get the effect where we want it and not everywhere. I'll just do this as quickly as I can. You might decide the blue fringe looks good, like a bit like a atmosphere, although you can't see the moon's atmosphere from the Earth apparently, and it's so thin anyway. So that's the blues taken care of, and now there's just this greeny yellow over here. So I'm going to duplicate this previous HSL adjustment again, Control J, and reset it. Invert the mask, and this time I'm going to target the greens and the yellows. And with the white brush again, just paint away the green fringe around the edge, like that. So that should be sufficient. Let's just have a look at how we're doing. It's okay. I'm not very happy about these areas that are a bit blown out down here, but for the sake of example, I'm going to leave that alone. Right, the next bit we're going to deal with is in the Luma layer, and in here I want to put a clarity filter. In fact, I'll probably end up putting 2 clarity filters in there. Let's see where that's ended up. That's great. So I'm going to boost the strength of this clarity filter, which is embedded in the luminosity layer, to 100%, and I'm going to duplicate that. Now that looks, even to my eye, too much. So this second clarity filter, I'm going to drop that down to 25%, just to give it a little extra. So if I switch that off and on, you may be able to see a slight difference. Next, I'm going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment into this layer as well. And I can make some adjustments to this. Perhaps, do I want to boost the contrast? Maybe slightly, say 5%. Do I want to reduce the brightness? Let's say 10%. Okay, brightness and contrast adjusted, obviously very to your own taste. Right, next I'm going to put a levels adjustment in here. Above the brightness and contrast. And I'm just going to nudge the black level up a little bit. That's so that I'm going to get the sky, as it were, nice and black. Right, now it's time to sharpen the image. In Affinity version 3, there are some bandpass sharpening live filters, which I'll use because that's what's in here, but I would tend to still want to use the macros that James Riston developed, which I've got copies of. And if you want those, you can go to his website and acquire those. But let's use what's been provided in Affinity 3. So I think they're going to be in here under multi-band sharpen. And I want to push that above the Luma layer. And this pass, I think I want a base radius of 1 pixel, maybe 2. And the number of bands I'm going to go for is 6. And I think this equates to regular, and I'm not going to add any contrast. And then I'm going to duplicate that layer again, but this time I'm going to drop this down to 2, which I think would equate to fine on one of James's macros. But as I say, I still tend to want to use his macros. I can see a better result using the macros than using the multi-band sharpening. Above here, I'm going to use another filter, and it's going to be an unsharp mask, and I'm just going to set these to 1 pixel, a factor of 1, and a threshold of 1%, and that just gives it a slight improvement. Now, no, I'm not viewing this as at 100%, which is what I should be, to get a good feel for how these macros and adjustments are being applied. Let's have a quick look at 100%. And that looks fine. Right, so just above this sharpening section, I'm just going to put a few more adjustments in. I want to just reduce the contrast a bit overall. Let's call it 15%. Don't need to change the brightness. And I'm going to have a look at the white balance and see if I can make it look a little bit more moon-like just by cooling it down a bit. Let's cool it down, say, by 10%. I think that's made a subtle difference. And towards the end of this, I'm going to add some noise, but only to the very dark areas, and in this case, the sky. So it's a add noise, and I only want to add a tiny bit of noise, so I'm going to put in 0.5, even though it will display it as 1%. It is doing it as a 0.5 in the maths. And I'm going to use the blend option to make sure that that is only being applied in the very dark areas by adjusting the composition range such that it's only about 2% of darks. And that is pretty much it. Obviously, you can go ahead and continue making adjustments to Kingdom Come, but that's basically the workflow that I use. I hope that's been useful.